Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Table brought to you by the Blue Stable. I am your host, Luke Verkamp, and tonight is the reunion again. Austin's with me tonight, so how are you doing tonight, Austin?
Pretty good, man. It's been a lot of on off, and I feel like it's only been a week. I've only missed that 1 week. We were both here the week before, but it feels like it's been a lot longer than that.
Yeah, it's felt like a pretty big gap in between, but it really hasn't been too bad. I know last week we got on the call together for about 1 minute before your internet decided to shut off for some reason.
I mean, literally in the middle of having a conversation with you, and then just everything went dead, and I was like, "Oh, it must have been his internet." And then everything on my end went dead, and I was like, "It was my internet." Okay.
Yeah, it's a shock because the internet that I had was not good, but now I got fiber internet, so now we're doing pretty well. Very happy about it.
I reset my router before we did this, so we should be good.
Awesome. So we should be good to go.
Good.
Uh, for today's show, we're going to have a little bit of a longer one because this week should be the trade deadline for most fantasy leagues. Not all, because some people are going to have different weeks set up for you. So, but this is, I believe, the actual set, just deep by default trade deadline week for most leagues. So we're going to talk a little bit more about trades today than usual. But we'll also talk about news and notes. We're going to go over some waiver wire pickups for you. And we're going to bring back trending or ending like last week. But today I'm going to have Austin's opinion on some of these as well. And then we'll finish it off with our starts of the week. So, Austin, you ready for this?
I think so, yeah. Let's get into it.
All right. We'll start off with the news and notes like usual. Calvin Ridley has been out that 3-game minimum that he was for being put on the NFI list, but Arthur Smith said that there's still no timetable for his return. And with it being mental health, there's no real good timeline that anybody can give. All I can say is just I hope Calvin gets better mentally. And he should just take whatever time he needs to get right with that. The Eagles signed Dallas Goddard to a big extension. This is big for dynasty owners. We all saw once Zach Ertz was out of the building that this was either do or die for Dallas Goddard. He was either going to get re-signed or he was going to move on in free agency. And he's proved himself over the past, about 5 weeks now of Zach Ertz being gone, that he gets this big extension. Austin, I want to get your thoughts on this real quick, but where would you view Goddard among other tight ends for dynasty for the next few years down the line? Like we got Noah Fant, Kyle Pitts, younger guys like that. So I want to get your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a solid keeper, especially with Jalen Hurts seems to be improving as a passer. A lot of people aren't really seeing that too much just because he's Jalen Hurts. I'm going to be honest, I was one of those people. I was a non-believer, but I mean, he really does seem like he's improving just as a quarterback more than as a runner. So that's nice to see. So, it should mean more for Dallas Goddard, should mean more for Devontae Smith. And that's pretty much it for the Eagles roster. But I really think he's going to be a solid option if he's in any dynasty league for sure.
Yeah, I actually have Goddard in my main dynasty league, so I'm very happy to see that he got that extension and the progress he's made. Because since Ertz has left, Goddard's had 3 receptions for 70 yards, 6 receptions for 72, 3 for 33, 43, 2 for 28, and 5 for 62 this past game. So it's been a little inconsistent, but he's still getting high targets and high receiving yards, which you like to see for tight ends. But yeah, big thing is that Jalen Hurts has been improving over the season, which is big. I mean, we saw quarterbacks similar to him. I'm not going to compare him to Lamar Jackson, but he's the closest thing we have right now. And you look at Lamar, and Lamar has grown so much as a passer over his career. I think Jalen Hurts could do the same thing if he gets that time to develop. Amari Cooper got placed on the COVID list, and he missed this past Sunday's game and is in danger of missing this Thursday night game, since it's going to be less than a week in between him testing positive and this Thursday night game. So we'll have to keep an update on that, see how that goes, but it seems like he's probably going to be out.
It does mean more for Michael Gallup, though.
It does mean more for Michael Gallup, which we'll get more into that here in a couple ones down the ring here. But Chris Carson is expected to miss the rest of the season with a neck injury. That's just one of those things he's never been able to get healthy from, and he's probably just going to have the surgery now instead of trying to get healthy and then playing through it and then getting surgery after the season, which is probably smart long term. But yeah, he's going to miss the rest of the season, which Alex Collins, I don't know how much I love this because Alex Collins really hasn't been that great for Seattle. Rashad Penny and DJ Dallas are still there, but do you see anybody split like that's going to take over that backfield, Austin?
No, not at all. I mean, we might be seeing Russell Wilson be using his legs a little more, but I mean, like classic old Russell Wilson, but I mean, I don't really see any running back taking over this running back room.
I gotta say, Alex Collins, he's been like the starter. I don't know if I can even call him a starter, but these past few games, he's had 16 carries for 35 yards, 10 carries for 44 yards, 10 carries for 41 yards, 10 carries for 36 yards. And over that span, he's received 2 targets. So that's not exactly what you want from a running back in fantasy. So
he's about as average of a running back as you can get. I mean,
yeah,
that's not really a good thing for fantasy. I mean, maybe in real life, but for fantasy wise, that's not really what you want.
Fantasy wise, it's going to be hard to trust him at all, even in a flex spot. I'd much rather take a high upside guy than trying to go with Alex Collins. Miles Sanders got taken off the injured reserve. Michael Carter went out this past game with an ankle sprain. He's expected to miss a couple of weeks. So this is going to bump up Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson. I don't really care for either of those players, but if I had to pick one of the other, I'd pick Ty Johnson before Tevin Coleman, where he is at his age. CeeDee Lamb went out with a concussion, and while it was first reported that it was most likely not going to play on Thursday, Jerry Jones's son said there's still a chance that he could play. So we'll have to see how he goes with the concussion protocol. But if he is out, that is a huge boost to Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson. So we'll have to keep their status, him and Amari's status, to see how they do by Thursday night. Justin Fields had bruised ribs, and Andy Dalton is planning on starting on Thursday for the Bears. Cortland Sutton got extended. Now, this was a surprise to me because whenever I saw Tim Patrick get extended, I immediately thought that this meant Cortland Sutton was not going to get an extension and he was going to be a free agent and hopefully would have got signed by the Colts, but probably not. Either way, he got re-signed. The big thing for me with Sutton is that I want to see if they get a different quarterback this offseason. Because while Teddy, he's a good starting NFL quarterback, he doesn't do you guys any good for the fantasy options there in Denver. Austin, what do you think about that situation going on in Denver?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this year seems like somewhat of a lost cause. Not too much of a lost cause. Teddy Bridgewater's been serviceable. He's been getting the ball to his receivers, and that's really all you can ask for from him. But we talked about a little bit about this in the Blue Stable chat that we've got going. Like I said in there, I really feel like the Broncos are just a quarterback away. That defense is good. The wide receivers are good. That running back room is good. The offensive line's starting to come together. I mean, really just anybody more than a serviceable quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater, you get them even just one of the rookies in the upcoming draft, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Carson Strong, Sam Howell, any of them probably going to do better than Teddy Bridgewater's going to do. There aren't any free agent quarterbacks that I can think of that would really work out well. Maybe a trade for Aaron Rodgers Aaron Rodgers will probably be leaving Green Bay, so maybe he will go to Denver, like it was heavily rumored last offseason. So I mean,
Aaron Rodgers in Denver would just be a fantasy dream.
If Aaron Rodgers goes to Denver with that Broncos team, watch out because they're going to be dangerous. That's Aaron Rodgers has never had weapons or hasn't had weapons like this in a very long time.
Yeah, you just look at Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Javonte Williams, Tim Patrick, even KJ Hamler. Like, wow, that would be a major upgrade.
And that defense that he's got on the other side, so he's not constantly playing from behind. I mean, he'll be in heaven. He will.
Yeah, that'd be the goal, but I don't know if that's going to end up happening. Anyway, moving on, Jamal Agnew on the Jaguars. I don't know how many people knew that he was on the Jaguars, but he's been one of their best receivers because for some reason they don't throw Marvin Jones or Laviska Shenault the ball. He is out the rest of the season with a hip injury. The Texans, for some reason, cut Philip Lindsay. I want to get your thoughts on this, Austin, but where do you think some good landing spots for him? Because for me, I feel like the Titans might be a good spot for him with all their injuries going on. But I want to hear your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to agree with Titans for sure. I don't really think that – I don't know why they cut him unless they just want him to go to a contender at this point because he was easily their best running back and they barely used him as it was. This is a guy that, if I'm not mistaken, had – pretty close to 1,000 yards, if not more than 1,000 yards in Denver. Am I wrong?
I think he had 2 1,000-yard seasons, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like Denver. He's some scrub off the streets. Like, I don't even know. I don't even have a name ready for this, but I mean,
current Adrian Peterson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Like Adrian Peterson or like Dontrell Hillard or somebody like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he'll probably go to a contender who's just looking for a running back to push them just a little bit further than that playoff push, probably an AFC team, if I had to guess. Titans do make the most sense.
The thing is that he is on waivers, so he's going to have to go through the waiver claim place, which, speaking of that, one of the places that I think he could go to is Seattle because they got a pretty high waiver claim and they kind of need a running back right now because none of theirs are very good.
Really trying to claw their way back up into that playoffs, at least contention at this point too.
Yeah,
it's really anybody. Pretty much anybody who's currently a playoff team doesn't really need a running game going. They already got one, or they just don't need one in general to be able to win. But yeah, so I mean, I feel like it's going to be somebody who's trying to force their way into playoff contention. Somebody who's close, but just maybe a running game away.
Ravens also, I think, could be a good place as well because they've been rotating between Latavius Murray, Devonta Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, Tyson Williams, guys like that. So there's a lot of places he could go. I definitely think he's going to end up on a team. So it's definitely something to keep your eye on because if he goes to somewhere like Seattle or Tennessee, he could easily be the best back there and take the starting role, which if he would go to Tennessee, that's a guy that I would want on my fantasy team just for the upside that he gets.
For sure,
yeah. Moving on, Giants fired Jason Garrett. We're recording Tuesday night. This morning I went on Twitter and I saw Dan Orlovsky posted a video of 3 Giants wide receivers running into each other. And he was saying this is awful. So maybe Dan Orlovsky got Garrett fired. Who knows? But either way, he's out. Don't really know what to say about the Giants offense until I see it really improve. There's not much I can say to make you believe it. So
Freddie Kitchens was the replacement. So I mean, I'm sure
that is true. That much. Yeah, we'll have to. That's going to be interesting. Dan Campbell said that Jared Goff is doing better, and he is leaning on starting him on Thursday. So we'll have to see what happens, but this doesn't really do much for anybody in Detroit except for DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson. Zack Wilson is expected to make his return this week for the Jets. I'll be curious to see how this does for the Jets offense because Elijah Moore has really started to break out. And I want to see how he does with Zack Wilson now, rather than beforehand whenever Zack Wilson wasn't really giving him the ball. And we mentioned this a little bit ago, but Titans released Adrian Peterson and elevated Dontrell Hillard to the 53-man roster. And the Titans also signed Golden Tate to their practice squad. I think this is mainly just because Julio's been injured and AJ's been off and on injured, just in case they get that veteran presence in there. Zeke got hurt on Sunday, but he had a full practice on Tuesday. And then Kamara and Ingram were both out of practice on Tuesday. So that's something to keep an eye on, because if they're both out, then Tony Jones is next up in line. Now, the teams on bye this week are the Arizona Cardinals and Kansas City Chiefs. So while it's just two teams, it's two very high-powered offense teams. So that's a lot of people you got on bye this week. So going to have to look out for some bye replacements. And moving on, we're going to go into the waiver wire segment. I'll start off with Dontrell Hillard. As we just said a little bit ago, he got signed to the Titans 53-man roster because he actually had some juice in his legs, and like what 40-year-old Adrian Peterson had. So he's someone, I don't know if you want to roster him or not. He is currently rostered in 0% of leagues, but if he does get that starting role, I feel like you should roster him just in case, because any starting running back in the NFL should be rostered on a fantasy team. So he got 12 fantasy points this past week because he only had 35 rushing yards. He had 10 targets in the receiving game this past week and caught 8 of them. So that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, he's probably one of the top running back waiver wire pickups this week.
Yeah, I mean, he did pretty solid in his stint with Cleveland. So I mean, it wouldn't be terrible to see him start. I don't think he will. I think Deontay Foreman's been doing just fine as a starter for now. It could change on a moment's notice, just like Adrian Peterson changed on a moment's notice. So I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But as of right now, just something to monitor more so than anything else. Next waiver wire pickup is going to be Cedric Wilson, the Cowboys wide receiver. He's been pretty solid as of right now. Despite being the wide receiver 4, is still getting a reasonable amount of targets and everything, which is crazy. He had 7 targets against Kansas City with Michael Gallup back and everything, and Amari Cooper is now on the COVID list. He might not play. If you got an open spot for a flex, Cedric Wilson wouldn't be a bad flex option going against the Raiders defense coming up here. It's a solid passing defense, but Dak Prescott's been a solid quarterback attacking those defenses anyway. So, I mean, it'd be something to take a look at for sure.
Yeah, Cedric is one of those guys that he's going to take advantage of the moment. Michael Gallup is back, yes, but if both Cooper and Lamb are out, I feel like he would be a good spot start if you really needed somebody in that flex position. So you mainly got to watch out for Cooper and Lamb to see if either one of them plays, because if they do, then it's going to be Cooper and Gallup on the outside, or Lamb and Gallup on the outside, and then Dalton Schultz is probably going to get a lot of that underneath stuff. Moving on is going to be the Jets running backs, Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson. Really, it's kind of going to be a coin flip until we get the official reports on who's going to be starting in the backfield. Tevin Coleman got a good chunk of work once Michael Carter left, so he might end up being the starter, but I personally think Ty Johnson's probably the better running back of the two, but maybe they want to use him more in a third down role. So I probably wouldn't start either one of them this week, just because you don't know who's going to get the workload. But if you want to pick them up to take your shot for who starts while Michael Carter's out, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, personally, I like Ty Johnson a lot more than I like Tevin Coleman. He's probably the more well-rounded back, whereas Tevin Coleman just more of, I feel like, just a receiving back more so than anything else. Ty Johnson is probably going to be the starter, I feel like.
I just looked. Ty Johnson got 1 carry and 1 target last week, while Tevin Coleman got 5 carries and 1 target. So
there's no telling then. Did Tevin Coleman play against Indy? Because I know Ty Johnson got a ton of carries against Indy.
No, I don't think Coleman was back.
Okay,
till
that's
then.
probably why then. It'll be interesting to see. Regardless, I don't think either of them are really major guys to watch. Just because it's the Jets. Zack Wilson's the quarterback. That should be all you need to know.
I just now saw, but Tevin Coleman, do you know how old he is?
He's probably close to 30, I would guess, right?
Yeah, he's 28.
Jesus, already.
Yeah. Oh man.
Next waiver wire guy we've got here is Nick Westbrook. I'm not saying his whole name because I'm always Nick Westbrook at Indiana. Watching him play against Ohio State. There's a guy I really liked actually coming out of college a couple years ago. Somebody I really wanted the Colts to take a look at actually. So he's a solid player. Last week got a ton of targets, 8 targets, 7 receptions, 107 yards. Just went off, and it's not like it's his first game having a really solid game. Week 3 against Indy, he had 53 yards and a touchdown. So if AJ Brown's going to continue to be hurt, and Julio Jones it's Julio Jones. So I mean, Nick Westbrook's not a bad option to take a look at for sure.
Yeah, the main reason that he's on our list is AJ Brown kind of got scuffled up this past week, and Julio is, I believe, still on IR. So if they are both out, he might end up being wide receiver 1 on the week. And I mean, they don't have Derrick Henry already, so they kind of have to pass. So you might as well take their top passing option.
Pretty much all they've got left is just the passing game.
Yeah. And then next up, we got Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I always mess up his name one way or the other just because of all the weird words. Yeah, MVS is probably the best way to describe him. But he took full advantage of Allen Lazard being out this past week. He got 10 targets, only caught 4 of them, but it was for 123 yards and a touchdown. So if Marquez is still in that starting role for Allen Lazard this next week, you got to kind of keep an eye on Lazard's shoulder. They're playing against the Rams, so that's probably going to be a very high-scoring game. I'd expect MVS to get a lot more work.
Yeah, this is for sure going to be a shootout this week. I mean, you got to also think about the 123 yards, 75 of that was on one play. So, but he also had those 10 targets. He only hauled in 4 of them, but he had 10 targets. So if he's going to have any sort of a starting role, he's going to probably look pretty good, I would imagine. 10 targets is a lot for.
And this is not just 10 targets. This is 10 targets from Aaron Rodgers.
Right, exactly. We all know how picky Aaron Rodgers is as receivers too. So, it's definitely somebody to take a look at, especially if he's going to continue to be in that starting role. Last waiver wire pickup is going to be Matt Breida, the running back for the Buffalo Bills. I know it's hard to keep track of where Matt Breida's been for the last couple of years, and it's not like he's a bad running back at all. He's been a really solid running back. I really wanted him to do a lot when he was down in Miami. Didn't do anything in Miami. He was a really good back in San Francisco, and I really thought he was going to take that RB1 role somewhere. Finally looks like he is taking that RB1 role. Devin Singletary is not doing anything. Zach Moss isn't doing anything. Nobody expected him to do anything, but I mean, it's not like these guys are bad running backs. They're just not being used correctly at all. Matt Breida, for some reason, is being used correctly in Buffalo, and it really looks like he's turning around his career here. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Dawson Knox, that offense is really opening up holes for him. If defenses think that, they're going to start passing the ball more because they don't have a running game, Matt Breida is opening up that running game.
Yeah, the thing with Matt Breida is that, he's got speed.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some serious speed there. And, yeah, he's definitely looked like the best Buffalo running back these past 2 weeks. So it's kind of hard for Buffalo to just stop giving him the ball and giving it to Zach Moss and Devin Singletary, who both have been kind of off and on throughout their career there. So while I don't think I would start him yet, he's definitely a guy that if he does take over that starting role come playoff time, he could be someone that you can put in your flex for the fantasy playoffs, and he gets you a lot of points because that's a great offense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, moving on, we're going to do our trending or ending segment where I discuss some trends that have been going on in the league, because we know the top guys like Jonathan Taylor is going to be a running back one. We know Cooper Kupp's wide receiver one. But these are some guys in the middle there that we're trying to see, are they going to continue their downward spiral or continue their trend upward for the fantasy playoffs? And starting out, I'm going to use a couple from last week because I wanted to hear Austin's thoughts on them. So the first one we're going to do is Cortland Sutton not being as good whenever Jerry Jeudy is playing. So to give you some context, Austin, I'm going to give you these stats real quick.
Okay.
When Jerry Jeudy is out, Cortland Sutton gets 9.1 targets a game and 87.5 receiving yards a game. But when Jeudy is in, he gets 3 targets a game and 25.5 yards a game. So that's 6 targets a game less. And what is that? 62 yards less a game. So do you think that's going to keep going, or do you think that's going to end?
You know, it sounds like it's going to keep going. Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver one in that offense. He is the best wide receiver by a long shot in that offense. No matter how good he's looked, he is the best wide receiver. And the only reason he hasn't looked that great is because of the quarterback throwing him the ball. If he gets a quarterback to throw him the ball, I mean, he could end up being a top 10, 15 receiver. Cortland Sutton is still a really good receiver. That's why he earned that extension. But, you know, the fact that Jerry Jeudy is that wide receiver one, Jerry Jeudy is taking over that offense, for the most part, at least, it's really showing that Cortland Sutton isn't as necessary to them as Jerry Jeudy is. And I really feel like it's just a quarterback thing more so than it's a Cortland Sutton thing. So it seems like it's probably going to continue on that now. Maybe next year it changes a little bit, depending on who their quarterback is under center, but it really seems like it's probably going to stay like that. And that is something that I've noticed too. It's not even just, I probably didn't even need the statistics. You could have just told me, hey, Cortland Sutton's not being used when Jerry Jeudy's in. And I'd be like, yeah, I believe that. I believe that 100%.
Yeah, I mainly wanted to throw those stats in there because it's crazy how big the difference is between the two. Yeah, like 6 targets a game. That's not just like, oh, just a few targets here and there. No, it's 6 whole targets a game. So like that's a huge just difference. And yeah, I definitely think it's really depending on quarterbacks. But since we're talking about this season, Teddy Bridgewater is going to stay that starting quarterback unless Drew Lock goes in, which I don't foresee unless there's an injury. So yeah, I think this is going to keep on trending. And I don't see why it wouldn't. Cortland Sutton's is talented receiver, but they're just not getting him the ball.
Like I said, it's just a quarterback thing.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a quarterback thing more than it is that than that Cortland Sutton sucks. Like, I'm not saying Cortland Sutton sucks because he obviously doesn't. We saw what he did while Jerry Jeudy was out. But yeah. Moving on, the next one is going to be Elijah Moore's just almost dominance over the past month. Since their bye week in week 6, he's had 6 targets, 8 targets, 6 targets, 11 targets. So he's had over 9 fantasy points in each game. And 2 games he had over 20 points. So do you foresee this continuing, or do you think with Zack Wilson returning it's going to end?
You know, so the thing is I'm a big Elijah Moore guy. I really liked him coming out of Ole Miss. A speedy receiver, you know, Tyreek Hill type stuff. Not quite Tyreek Hill level, but Tyreek Hill type stuff. The main thing you've got to look at with Elijah Moore, he's had a great last, 5 or 6 weeks?
Yeah, 5 weeks.
You know what else has been the last 5 or 6 weeks? 5 weeks? Zack Wilson hasn't been.
No, Zack Wilson, yep.
Zack Wilson was here weeks 1 through 5. Elijah Moore didn't perform. Zack Wilson leaves in weeks at the very beginning of the week 7 game against the Patriots. all of a sudden Elijah Moore starts going off. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. I really feel like it's a Zack Wilson issue. If Zack Wilson's under center, I don't think Elijah Moore is doing anything. I think Zack Wilson's throwing the ball to opposing defenses more so than he's throwing to his receivers.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I know I mentioned that last week. I said, yeah, it all hinges on Zack Wilson more than it does Elijah Moore, because we see the success that Elijah Moore has with these other quarterbacks, the Mike White, I can't even think of the name of the guy. Josh Johnson.
That's a legend that you're disrespecting.
Josh Johnson. Joe Flacco this past game, the elite quarterback that he finally got. But yeah, we saw the success. It's just now we got to see if, now that he's basically been the wide receiver one for the Jets, if he can continue that now with Zack Wilson whenever he returns. Because with Elijah Moore getting these targets like he's the wide receiver one there in New York, my question is, will they try to get him the ball more? Will they game plan for him more? So we'll have to see on that. I hope it still trends because I really like Elijah Moore, but I also could see this ending.
I mean, it is like you said. It also, on the flip side of Zack Wilson being the reason that he's not getting the ball, it also seems like ever since Zack Wilson went out, they started drawing up plays to get Elijah Moore the ball more. So, I mean, if they keep those plays in there, if they say, Zack Wilson, you're back, here's the plays that we had while you were gone, we need you to get Elijah Moore the ball more often, then that's a completely different situation. Is it something that you should take a shot at in a trade during the trade deadline this week? Probably not. I would say just let it sit for now. If you got your daily fantasy lineups, give that a week and then put Elijah Moore in those daily fantasy lineups, like DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever. But it's, as of this week right now, I think it's just something more to monitor than anything else. I think that it's going to end, however.
The thing that concerns me is like trying to hold off on him is that he's got a good matchup against Houston this week. And then next few weeks he has Philadelphia, which isn't a great matchup for wide receivers. Then he's got New Orleans, Miami, and Jacksonville in the fantasy playoffs there. So that's what's making me like, ooh, I really want to like maybe try to throw a dart at him, but his value is really high at the moment, which sucks. So, well, you kind of got to pick your poison there if you want to try to go for him now or hold on to him, whatever you want to do.
If anything, I feel like he's more of a trade piece than he is a trade target right now. Use his last few weeks as, trade bait. And even if you get something good back, you're still getting something good back, no matter if he does well or not these next few weeks. I really feel like it's a win-win for you to trade him away than it is for anybody else to trade for him.
I was going to try to think of a trade person.
Any of the Bucs.
Do what?
Any of the Bucs receivers. Give me Antonio Brown, with Antonio Brown coming back.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, would you trade Elijah Moore for Alex Collins?
No.
Javonte Williams?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would trade away Elijah Moore to get Javonte Williams back. And who else I'd trade away? I'd trade him to get back Mike Williams too.
Mike Williams, yeah. All right. Well, we better move on. We've been talking about Elijah Moore for a while. Which is fine because I love talking about Elijah Moore because he was one of my draft darlings. Like, I traded up in my rookie fantasy draft to get Elijah Moore. So I got him on my dynasty team. I have a special place for him. Moving on, we got Hunter Henry scoring his touchdowns. He's had 7 touchdowns in the last 8 weeks. So I want to see if you think that touchdown trend is going to continue or if you think that's going to end.
I'd probably say that's going to continue. And I only say that because the last several weeks, if anything, the only reason he's been getting those touchdowns is because Mac Jones has been developing more and more. Mac Jones did not start out this season hot, but as much as I hated Mac Jones coming out of college, and that's just not just because he torched Ohio State in the playoffs, Mac Jones has really, really looked good. He's looked like the franchise quarterback for these Patriots. And that's something that scares me as a Colts fan coming up in a couple weeks, that he's gonna, go from torching Ohio State in the national championship, my Buckeyes in the national championship back in January, to torching my Colts in December in the same year. So that's going to be fun for me as a football fan in general. But I really feel like this can continue, and it really seems like he likes Hunter Henry as that big red zone target.
I gotta say, I'm going to disagree on this one for just one reason, which is his target share. While he does get targets in the red zone, which is the most important part about the touchdown streak, I just want to read you off his targets during the streak.
Okay.
So the first week that this started was against Tampa Bay, where he got 5 targets. Then he had 8 targets. Then he had 2 targets. And it was 4, 3, 3, 4, 3. So his targets have been 4 or less since week 6. So the past, 6 weeks. So that's the only thing that's making me hold back from saying this is going to continue. And plus, touchdowns are so volatile. Like we saw with Davante Adams last year, he had 18 touchdowns last year. Now this year he's got, I think, 3 or 4. So it's just one of those things you can't really predict to continue or end. So while it could easily keep going, I think there's a better chance that it ends.
Yeah, he does have those targets, those low target numbers, but your trender end was if he's going to continue to score touchdowns. And as long as he's getting those targets in the red zone, that's all I care about. He can get all 3 of his targets in the red zone. As long as they're all there and as long as he's getting that shot in the end zone. I'm not saying he's a guy that you should go out and trade for.
Yeah.
The guy that's probably going to continue to score touchdowns, though.
Which, no, I totally agree. Like, I think probably these past few weeks, over 50% of his targets was probably in the red zone. But yeah, I don't know if I can count on him scoring touchdowns each week.
I think week 9 against Carolina is a good game to highlight here. 2 receptions for 19 yards and a touchdown. Yep. Those are games that I can see happening here. Those are the more likely games. So I mean, he could still get that touchdown, but he's still going to get you 9 fantasy points. So
yeah, he's going to get you a touchdown, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Next up, we're going to talk about Mike Williams. He started off very hot, and then he disappeared, and now this past week he came back again. So I want to know if you think that his kind of struggle is going to continue, or if you think that he's going to come back and be that dominant receiver that we saw at the beginning of the season.
I don't think he's going to be the dominant receiver we saw at the beginning. I think he is going to be better than serviceable. I think we're going to see a lot more double-digit point games from him. He's not going to be that top 5 receiver anymore. He had 20 points against the Steelers last week, which is great because I needed him to have a big game, but it didn't matter because the rest of my team decided not to show up anyway. So the one time he actually plays well in the last 5 weeks, including the bye, he, finally has a good game for me, but the rest of my team decides they don't want to show up. So, I mean, he's got a lot of favorable matchups coming up. I kind of foresaw this happening with this cold stretch that he had. He faced a lot of good defenses in the last few weeks, which probably contributed to his low numbers. However, Keenan Allen still had great weeks those weeks. So it was more so just Justin Herbert not being able to get him the ball. It's not like his target share wasn't there either. It's just Justin Herbert wasn't able to get him the ball. He's got more favorable matchups coming up, not necessarily this week against Denver, despite the fact that, Denver's a pretty middle tier defense, I would say. They've got a good defense in general, but, against wide receivers, they're maybe 11 or 12, probably somewhere around there. But yeah, I could see it any game after that. Cincinnati, the Giants, Kansas City, Houston, he's got favorable matchups coming up. So I don't think the struggles are going to continue, but I also don't think they're necessarily going to end either. I don't think he's going to be that top 5 receiver again.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be like that top tier receiver that we saw at the beginning of the season, mainly because I think the biggest thing we saw is that Keenan Allen is still the wide receiver one in Los Angeles, which in my opinion he should be because he is very underrated, but that's a different story. Um, Another thing that I never saw the official report or anything, but apparently Mike Williams had like a knee swelling like earlier on in the season, and the Chargers always listed it as like a non-factor. Like I think Brandon Staley said, "Oh yeah, that's a non-factor." Like that he has knee swelling, like he's still out there playing and stuff. But looking at his like numbers, it could have had
Seems like
an impact. Yeah, it seems like it was a factor in his production.
I don't think the deep threat having knee swelling is not.
Yeah, I was like, for a wide receiver, I think you kind of need to have your knees not swelling to do pretty well in. So
that's Todd Gurley.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, his knees disappeared, but
yeah. Anyway, next up is going to be Daryl Henderson with his kind of slump that he's in. I want to see your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it really seems like you just looked at my fantasy team and started going down the list of everybody who's having a slump.
All the players that aren't doing so hot.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like Daryl Henderson is more of a product of the Rams offense than he is his own running back. When the Rams offense isn't doing well, Daryl Henderson's not going to do well. Any game that he's got against a bad defense, he's probably going to show out, especially in the receiving game. It really seems like Matt Stafford likes to involve him in the receiving game a lot. 5 carries against San Francisco is pathetic. And that was his last game for 31 yards. So, what are you going to get out of that? The game before that, another 8 points. So, it's really just a matter of how the Rams offense is doing. If the Rams offense isn't going to do well, Daryl Henderson's not going to do well. So it's something, I'd probably say it's something that's going to continue to trend unless Matt Stafford can turn this boat around, because it seems like they're just starting to like slow down. They had that very, very, very hot start and everybody was eating. The whole squad was eating. But it seems like it's starting to continue to happen with everybody. Aside from Cooper Kupp, everybody's starting to struggle.
Yeah, I got to say, I think this is more – I know I talked about this last week too, about saying this is more trending or ending on the Rams offense as a whole than it is on Daryl Henderson, because these past couple of weeks it's been hard for Daryl Henderson because Stafford's thrown like 2 pick sixes and 4 picks in like the first quarter of the past 2 games. So it's kind of hard to get the run game going whenever you're down straight off the bat and not having as much possession time. So yeah, I think this is more you kind of betting on or against the Rams offense, which they're playing Green Bay this next week, and Green Bay's defense has gotten a lot better this year. So it'll be an interesting matchup. They'll probably score a lot of points though. So it's one of those things I would like to see this game, because then they play Jacksonville, they'll play Arizona again, Seattle, who hasn't had a great defense this year. You're still starting Daryl Henderson because he's been great, but
he's been great. He's still in that high-powered offense. The offense just isn't as high-powered as it was. Matt Stafford went from MVP candidate to like just struggling for whatever reason. I don't know like why. He's always been a really good quarterback. He just has collapsed the last few weeks, and that hinders everybody's fantasy value unless you're Cooper Kupp, because Cooper Kupp's the only fantasy relevant person on this offense still.
Right.
Maybe it's OBJ. Maybe OBJ is that locker room cancer everybody's been talking about.
OBJ is the problem. But no, the main thing I want to say yet is this was probably an unpopular opinion, but this is something that I saw early on in the season where I didn't really see that huge of a difference in the Rams offense this year than I did last year. Yes, it's obviously better than it was with Jared Goff, but I didn't see like a massive improvement outside of Cooper Kupp being a top wide receiver. But they've had their struggles of late, which I mean, every team this year has had struggles, so I can easily see them bouncing back. I'm not too worried about Daryl Henderson. I'm not saying go trade him away while his value is low. At this point, you probably need to hold on to him if you have him because you're not probably going to get much from him. But yeah, I definitely think they can come back.
I'm just glad that I not in our Blue Stable League, but in my money league, I traded him away a couple weeks ago, and I was able to get Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook for him and Mike Williams. So I mean, it worked out for the best, I think.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Next up, we're going to talk about Darnell Mooney being the wide receiver 1 in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it's Darnell Mooney. That's my boy. It's been my boy since last season. As long as he is getting his targets, he will be getting what he needs to be getting. So, I mean, the last 2 weeks of him playing 20 points each. I mean, it's Darnell Mooney, man. It's money with 2 O's. You know what I'm saying? So as long as he's getting his targets, and I don't care who's throwing the ball. I don't care if it's Justin Fields with his broken ribs. I don't care if it's Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. I don't care if it's Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles. You get Darnell Mooney the ball, he's going to make some plays. That's all I got to say about that. I'll keep it short and simple.
Yeah, Mooney's been a really good talent. He's finally been able to get more involved in the offense lately. And I definitely think this year he has taken over the wide receiver 1 role from Allen Robinson. It helped a lot this past week that Allen Robinson was out, and Allen Robinson has not had a practice yet this week. So he's probably going to be out this Thursday game as well, and Mooney probably should be a start. But yeah.
Was Robinson out last week against Baltimore?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Which is why Mooney had 16 targets this past week.
Yeah, is that why he had 16 targets? That makes a lot of sense then. So I mean, like I said, you get him the ball, he's going to make a play. He's going to end up being the wide receiver 1. Allen Robinson's going to leave in the offseason. That's almost a given, unless they franchise tag him again for absolutely no reason. Matt Nagy's also going to be leaving in the offseason. Darnell Mooney, if not by the end of this season, will be wide receiver 1 next season for sure, and it's hopefully a powered offense.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy in Dynasty to keep an eye on. I think now might be your time to try it. Well, actually, probably not now because his value's probably pretty high after that game that he's just had. So if he starts coming back down to earth, maybe you try to trade low for him. But yeah, I definitely think he's now the wide receiver 1 in Chicago.
In a redraft, you might be seeing people drafting him where Allen Robinson got drafted last year, which is going to be a little flip, depending on where Allen Robinson lands. If he stays in Chicago, it might be different, but I highly doubt he's going to stay in Chicago.
Yeah, I would hope not after how he's been this year, but you never know with Chicago. Yeah. Next up, we got Pat Friarmuth. If he's going to stay as a tight end 1, he's been really good these past few weeks. I know there's a show that I watch, the Fantasy Footballers, that they love saying the Muth is Luth whenever they talk about Pat Friarmuth, so I got to get that in there. But he's been really solid lately.
Yeah, I know we talked about it whenever the last time I was actually here was, but he's a tight end that I really like as long as you can get him the ball. That's the only issue, and that's if Big Ben is a starting quarterback, he's going to be able to get him the ball because Big Ben throws about as far as tight ends go. So that's about it for that. You're not going to see any deep threat wide receivers getting the ball from him. He's going to be throwing to the tight end a lot, especially in the red zone, especially in the end zone. So, I mean, as long as Big Ben's a starting quarterback, as long as it's the guy who can only throw the ball 10 yards like Big Ben can, Pat Friarmuth's tight end 1, and that's going to continue the trend for sure.
Well, these past few weeks, he's had 7 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets. So he's getting targeted a lot just because, like you said, Big Ben is Big Ben, and he can't really throw that far anymore. Craziest thing to me, I'm just looking at his stats here recently. In this past week against the Chargers, where it was like an offensive shootout, he had 7 targets for 4 receptions, 11 yards, and a touchdown. Still got you 11 fantasy points, but he had 11 yards on 4 catches.
7.5 yards per catch.
That's crazy.
That shows Big Ben's value there.
Yes. Moving on, next up, we're going to talk about Brandon Ayuk's revival. Over the past few weeks, he's been targeted more. He's been getting receptions. He's been getting touchdowns. Do you think Brandon Ayuk is getting revived for the fantasy playoffs this year?
I do. I really do. And I feel like it's somebody you guys need to go out and trade for. It's definitely a guy that's going to continue on this trend of becoming that wide receiver 2 next to Deebo Samuel. It really seems like Jimmy G's liking him a lot. They're finally incorporating him in that offense. It really seems like he's out of that doghouse, that imaginary doghouse that Kyle Shanahan had him in for whatever reason. But yeah, so I mean, against Jacksonville, 7 targets, 7 receptions. Terrible defense, but I mean, fantastic game from Brandon Ayuk. Great receiver still. He's still a great talent. It's not like he's just some random wide receiver that's only getting touches because he's all they have. He's still a great wide receiver. He's that really good wide receiver too. Deebo Samuel is going to be taking a lot of attention away from defenses, which leaves Brandon Ayuk a lot more open.
Yeah, I definitely think that he's someone you should buy like right now. Him, and if you can get Deebo, I doubt the person who has Deebo is going to give them up, but if you can get either one of them, grab them now because their whole schedule the rest of the way is amazing for wide receivers. Just absolutely amazing. So yeah, I think that he is going to step up more, especially as that offense is getting to roll more with Kittle healthy again and their running backs getting healthy. They've been on a roll lately, so I think that he's going to continue to improve and get those targets again. Definitely a guy I'm going to be trying to buy.
Absolutely.
And the final thing that we're going to have trending our ending is one of our guys that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, but Jordan Howard. Is it going to continue being a running back that's getting work?
Yes and no. He is going to be that RB1. It seems like for sure he's been getting double-digit carries for the last 4 weeks. So that doesn't seem like that's slowing down anytime soon. It's the flip side of if he's going to do anything with those carries. And it doesn't seem like he is. So I
will say real quick, he is officially out this next week. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably any week after this, that's different. It just seems like he's been, at least in the first 2 weeks of his stint with Philadelphia this year, he's been more touchdown dependent than he has anything else. Because it's not like the yards and stuff haven't been there for him. He still had 83 yards 2 weeks ago against Denver. Still had 63 yards against New Orleans, averaging almost 7 yards per carry in both of those games combined. So, I mean, it's not like he's not doing anything with the carries. He's not scoring. And that's the biggest part in fantasy is being able to get the touchdowns to get you the bigger points. He can rush for 100 yards and get you 9 points. What are you going to do with that? It's getting the touchdowns, even receptions, but it looks like he's not doing anything in the receiving game. He's just been a complete rusher this entire time. But the biggest part of being a fantasy running back is the receiving game and scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, this whole Eagles running back room is just a mess all in general because early on it was Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell, and then it was Jordan Howard and Boston Scott. And now it's Miles Sanders. Now that he's back, and Jordan Howard. It's all like really weird. I think Miles Sanders, especially with Howard being out this next week, is going to take back that running back 1 role here in Philadelphia. But I think Howard's proved himself enough to still get some work in the offense. I don't know if he's a guy that I'm going to keep rostering just because Miles Sanders is back, but he's definitely going to get work, and he's going to be a pretty decent backup running back that you can keep on your roster. Because if Miles Sanders gets hurt again, which there's always a chance for, he's shown us what he can do whenever he gets that lead role there in Philadelphia. And they got good matchups for the fantasy playoffs. So you may want to keep him on your roster just for that off chance that he might get that starting role again. But yeah, I think he's earned the right to get work in the offense yet. Now, moving on, we're going to go to the trade deadline week. Here we're going to talk about a number of players on what we think you should do with these players, if you should try to trade for them, if you should try to trade them away, what you should do. And then I'm going to also ask a few questions on would you rather between a couple players. So we're going to start off with Antonio Gibson. For me, I would try to be trading for Antonio Gibson. He's got some good matches coming up. This past week, he's finally been getting a little bit healthier after the bye week, and he had his season high total of 95 yards. So I'd be looking to trade for him. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I have him in a couple leagues, actually. He's definitely a guy that I would take a look at if I don't have him in a certain league. He's got a pretty solid schedule coming up for the rest of this year, especially in the playoffs. He's got a really good schedule, fantasy playoffs, I should say. But yeah, his value right now is pretty low, but that's only because he's been hurt. The healthier he gets, the better of a running back he becomes. And he's still a really good running back, just like he was last season as a rookie. If he becomes healthy again, it's definitely a guy that you want to buy low on right now. It's not necessarily buying that low, because it's not like he's been terrible the last few weeks. But it's a guy that you're buying low because his value is going to be much higher if he can get healthy.
Yeah, I definitely think that he's getting healthier. He's going to be one of those guys that you kind of want on your team for the fantasy playoffs. So, which also another guy that I want on my team during fantasy playoffs is the next guy, Javonte Williams. I am a huge fan of Javonte. I definitely think he's a buy right now. All of his matchups from here on out after the bye week they just had is all green. It's all top 10 matchups. So I think you should get him now. And honestly, while we're talking about him, I'd also buy Melvin Gordon, because it seems like they're using them both pretty split. Gordon's been getting more touchdowns. Javonte's been getting more yards and receiving work. So I'd try to get both of these Broncos running backs.
Yeah, they're pretty equal in terms of fantasy points, in terms of fantasy value, because like you said, one's getting the yards and the receptions, the other's getting the touchdowns. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It'd be great if Javonte Williams was getting the yards, receptions, and touchdowns, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. Is that the saying? Is that how that saying goes?
Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. Something like that. I'm sure I used it incorrect. You know what I meant. But yeah, he's definitely somebody you want to trade for. He actually is somebody that I did trade for last week in my money league, and he's going to ride my bench until I have a reason to start him. And then that's not saying that he doesn't deserve to be a starter right now. It's just the rest of my running backs. It's an 8-man league, so the rest of my running backs have been too good to put him in there. But if you've got 10, 12-man league, go out, trade for him. People might value him a little lower because he's in that split running back room, but it's not like him or Melvin Gordon are going to be bad options as running backs.
Yeah, I actually have him in my dynasty league, and I've been turning down trades for him because people have been trying to buy him, and I'm just holding on to him, hoping he does good during this playoff stretch. And for next year, whenever he's by himself, I can't wait to see what he does by himself, because he's been great so far. I know he's been like the leaders in broken tackles for running backs, and he's only playing like half the snaps, which is amazing. But yeah, definitely, I think go buy him. Now, next up is Christian McCaffrey. This one I'm torn on because I would like to buy him, but if I have him, I'd probably trade him away just because of the name value. He's not going to be like running back one the rest of the season, I don't think, because Cam's there. Cam's a rushing quarterback. He gets rushing touchdowns, as we saw the past couple weeks. If you can trade him away for like an Austin Eckler, I probably would. But yeah, I think I would try to trade him as high as you can right now. If you don't get somebody that's like a high up tier running back, then I wouldn't worry about it. But for me, I'd try to trade him because I don't think I would want to give up enough to get him.
Yeah, it's more of a trade away guy. I feel like, and it is a guy that I mentioned earlier. I traded him away. I traded him for Dalvin Cook, or for Jonathan Taylor. Actually, I traded him, Brandon Cooks, and
Godwin.
Yeah, and Chris Godwin for Jonathan Taylor. It worked out for the most part. I don't think Christian McCaffrey is going to be that top 5 back anymore. That's not to say he won't be good. I still think he's going to be very good. But if you can get a top 5, top 10 current fantasy back for him right now, go out and do that, because it's going to be worth it in the long run. But like I said, I mean, if you want to hold on to him, you're more than welcome to. I'd understand it. He's not somebody that I would go out of your way and trade for unless somebody's going to just give you him for nothing.
I gotta say, unless you can buy him low, like, I'd personally probably all the way through, like, if I did have him, I'd probably hold on to him. Worst case scenario, because I mean, you look at his past few weeks since he's been back from injury, he's had 13 points, 26 points, 24 points. He's still elite. He's still a great running back. He just has not very good matchups for the fantasy playoffs, and Cam's there to take away some of his rushing touchdowns. So if you can trade him for high up running back, I would, but if not, I'd hold on to him.
Yeah, it's not like he's a bad hold either, because I mean, it's not like Cam doesn't like throwing him the ball as a receiver. It's not like Cam doesn't like handing him the ball off. It's just more so is that Cam's going to start hawking those yards and those touchdowns that he would have gotten if PJ Walker or Sam Darnold were in a quarterback.
Right. Now, next guy we got is Alex Collins. Personally, I don't want him on my roster, so if you got him, I'd trade him away. Yeah, that's about all I have to say, really.
If you can get any sort of value for Alex Collins, I mean, I don't care what you're getting for him. If you can get anything for Alex Collins, go out and get it, because it's just Alex Collins isn't worth it. He's really not. He's a trade away guy. If you can't trade him away, cut him, pick somebody up. There's no point in having him on your team.
Next up is Leonard Fournette. Now, a few weeks ago, I probably would have said buy on him, but now I'd be a sell. He had a good stretch there for like 4 weeks where he was like a top running back, but now he's kind of come back down to earth these past few weeks. So, while I still think he can be like a good running back 2 or flex play. I don't think he's a running back 1 that he was a few weeks ago. So I'd definitely be trying to sell him if there's still people interested in him as being like a running back 1. But yeah.
If you can finesse somebody for Leonard Fournette right now, go off and do it. Go get a top 10 running back, top 15 running back for Leonard Fournette. I hate to be that guy, but I did tell everybody 5 or 6 weeks ago, sell Fournette, because at some point in time coming up very soon, he's going to crash. And he has finally started to crash. And it's not like he's been bad. I'm not saying that he's had bad weeks. He's just been good enough. That's not what you
An
want.
average.
Yeah, he's not that RB1 that he was at the beginning of the season. And that's exactly what I did. I had him in leagues, traded him away in all 4 leagugues, and it worked out for the best. Continue to work out, because he's not going to do anything for the rest of the season. He's going to continue to be average. And that's how, I mean, if you want a guy who's going to get you 10, 11 points, 9 points, that by all means keep him. That's your decision. But if you can get anything for him, if somebody still views him as a valuable back and they think he can continue on this pace that he's not going to continue on, I told you once already, trade him away. Told you this not even 3, it was like 5 weeks ago or something like that. Trade him away. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, he's definitely a trade away at this point. But moving on, we got DK Metcalf. He's had struggles throughout the season, partly because Russell Wilson's been out and partly because Seattle's offense as a whole has struggled. Personally, I would try to be buying low where I can for DK because he's still a good receiver. These past 2 weeks, he's had 8 targets each game, but he's only ended up getting 26 yards and 31 yards. So he's one of those guys that's just been he's getting the targets, but he's not getting the yardage with it. He's got good matchups coming up as well, but if his value is low in any way, shape, or form, I'd be trying to buy him. Otherwise, if his value is high and I have him, I'd be okay getting rid of him for if you get a Chris Godwin back, I'd probably trade him away for Chris Godwin.
Yeah. I mean, it's a guy that I would trade for if you can get low value. Maybe somebody like Elijah Moore, how we mentioned earlier. If you can trade Elijah Moore for DK Metcalf, go ahead and do that. His trade value right now is about as low as it's going to get. I'm not telling you it's going to improve any because Russell Wilson just hasn't looked like Russell Wilson recently, and I don't know why. But if we can get back into Russell Wilson form, which is unlikely because second half season Russell Wilson is never first half season Russell Wilson, and he missed the half mark. So I mean, we're automatically getting pushed into second half season Russell Wilson. So maybe DK Metcalf doesn't get to that point. If you've got him and somebody values him highly, maybe try trading him away. It wouldn't necessarily be a bad hold, but if you can trade him away, trade him away. If you have somebody who's valuing him very lowly, go ahead and trade for him. It's kind of just like you're valuing him as a low floor, high ceiling wide receiver at this point. That's really all you want to do. In my work league a couple weeks ago, while Russell Wilson was injured, somebody dropped DK Metcalf to the waiver for whatever reason, and now he's on my team, and he's been sitting on my bench this entire time because he hasn't done anything. So it's not like he's a bad wide receiver still. He just fantasy-wise doesn't have the value that DK Metcalf should have.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Next up is a guy that we talked about already a bit, but it's going to be Darnell Mooney. He is that wide receiver one there in Chicago. At this point, though, I would probably be trying to sell him more than I would be trying to acquire him because his value is probably at his highest it's ever been. So if you try to trade for him, you're probably going to have to give up a decent player. And to me, I wouldn't be willing to do that yet for Mooney because when Allen Robinson comes back, he's going to get some of those targets. You don't know what the quarterback play is going to be like, if it's going to be Andy Dalton more, if it's going to be Justin Fields more. So if I have him and I'm wanting to trade him, I would trade away before I would trade for. But I'd be okay with holding on to him as well. But I'd probably be more on the trade away at this moment.
Yeah, I think if anything, I would say hold him more than do anything in terms of trading. His value right now is about as high as it's going to get. If you can trade him away for something good, by all means, go for it. Because, I mean, if he continues on this pace, like we've said, every single week, if he continues on this pace and you traded him for a good wide receiver, that wide receiver that you traded for is still good, whether Darnell Mooney's been good or not. So, I mean, it's a win-win for you regardless. If you can trade him away, go ahead and trade him away. But I would just hold him at this point. It's not like he's going to get that much worse. I don't think he's going to continue as hot as he's been. But, he's still money with 2 O's. So it looks like he's the only target in Chicago right now. So, he's not a bad keep for sure.
Mooney or DK Metcalf?
Mooney. I'd say Mooney.
Interesting. I'd probably go Metcalf there. Mooney or Deontay Johnson?
What was it?
Mooney or Deontay Johnson?
Oh, Mooney for sure.
Mooney or Mike Williams?
Give me Mike Williams.
Let's see here. I'm trying to think of Mooney or Elijah Moore.
Give me Mooney in that situation. Elijah Moore is just, I don't think he's going to continue this at all.
Okay, we'll give you a tough one since you like Mooney so much. Mooney or Javonte Williams?
Oh.
Javonte Williams.
Javonte Williams.
Yeah, I definitely would too. All right, I just wanted to see how high you had him rated here.
He's up there. He's up there.
He's up there.
He could be lower, I guess. I'm a big Darnell Mooney guy, big believer.
Yeah, I had him last year in my dynasty league, but I ended up trading him away for Michael Pittman. So I'm happy with that because I root for the Colts and Pittman's been doing well. So I am very happy that it worked out for both of us because I liked Mooney. I like Pittman more though, especially because he's on the Colts. So yeah.
Which is fair.
Yeah. Next up is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, good old nuke. I'd be buy right now because his value is probably bottom floor of where it can be. He's been out the past 3 games and he's on bye this week. So this is going to be the 4th game where the fantasy manager is getting 0 points from DeAndre Hopkins and they're probably just ready to get rid of him. Next week, Kyler and DeAndre should be coming back. So he's an elite wide receiver. We saw it in the past. We saw it so far this year. I'd be trying to buy where I can.
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is probably the first or second best in the entire league as a receiver, not necessarily fantasy value, but as a receiver for sure. Somebody, if you're in multiple leagues, somebody in one of those leagues that has DeAndre Hopkins is tired of seeing him on their bench. Sick and tired of it. You go out, you can probably trade away. I mean, I don't know if you can trade Darnell Mooney for him, but you can probably trade away somebody with lower value than you normally have to trade away for DeAndre Hopkins.
Now this will be a tough one. Mike Williams or DeAndre? That's tough.
Give me DeAndre.
I'd probably do DeAndre just for the upside that he has compared to Mike.
But yeah, when Kyler Murray comes back, I mean, it's nuke all the way.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like he's like if you have nuke, you probably are fighting for a playoff spot, and you kind of need those guaranteed points right now. So they'll probably be willing to give him up for less than what he's actually worth. So I'd definitely be trying to buy.
It's a low ceiling or low floor, high ceiling thing again.
Right. Next up, we got the guy that we've talked about already on our thoughts on him, but it's Cortland Sutton. Personally, I wouldn't want to roster him. I do have him in a league just because it's our Blue Stable league, but it's because he has that high ceiling that we saw already. But if you can trade him away for something, I would, just because it seems like Jerry Jeudy is the guy in Denver. But I've saw some people that say you should buy low on him because he is a talented wide receiver. I just personally think that you should trade him away.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's Cortland Sutton is a very talented wide receiver. There's no doubt about that. That's why he earned that money. He earned that extension that he got. He really did. But fantasy-wise, he's not going to give you really any value, if any at all. So I mean, it's definitely a guy you're gonna want to trade him away and get what you can out of him.
Next up, we got Jalen Waddle with Miami. These past few weeks, well, since week 6 actually, he's been doing very well. Since week 6, he's had 13 targets, 8 targets, 11, 10, 6, 9. He's had over 10 fantasy points every game except one. But to me, I'd be trading him away because Devontae Parker and Will Fuller have been dealing with injuries all year. Quarterback play has been inconsistent. I think if Will Fuller and Devontae Parker come back, that's just going to hurt Waddle more than help him more. So I'd be trying to trade him away while his value's high, because if you're trading him at his highest, you're getting good value for him. You shouldn't be mad if he continues playing well. So I'd personally want to trade him away more than trying to get him at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Jalen Waddle is a guy that, like you said, has had inconsistent quarterback play. And that's not even just the quarterback playing in general. It's the fact that he hasn't had a consistent quarterback. Jacoby Brissett and Tua have been really flip-flopping in and out this entire season. it's really hard to catch a rhythm with your quarterback when you've got two different ones throwing you the ball every other week. So, I mean, he's still a really good receiver. Probably, he potentially could have been better than Jamar Chase this season had he had a quarterback throwing him the ball like Joe Burrow. He is just as talented as I think Jamar Chase is a little bit more talented. I think he's got a little bit more to his game. But Jalen Waddle, he's talent level up there with Jalen Waddle or with Jamar Chase. So, he's still good. He's got not great matchups coming up. So if you've got him on your team, trade him away while his value's hot. Like we've continued to say, if you can get something good for him, you're not missing out regardless. If he does well, he does well. But you've also got a player that does well. Just make sure you're picking your correct trades and not trading him away for pennies on the dollar just to get him off your team. That's not what I'm telling you to do. I'm not telling you to get him off your team, I'm telling you to get something for him.
Yeah, like I'd be totally fine with holding Waddle as well. It's just if I had him, if I were to decide on trading him or not, I would probably be willing to trade him more likely than not.
Mm-hmm.
Last guy that I want to talk about is Mike Williams. I added him pretty late just because of the fact that he had this great game on Monday night. So this one's a hard one for me because we saw the ceiling that he can have at the beginning of the season, but we also saw the floor that he can have in the middle of the season. I personally, if I had him, I'd be holding on to him, but I'd be okay with trading him away if I get good value in return. I wouldn't be looking to trade for him just for the fact that he is that like very high ceiling and a low floor. Keenan Allen's the guy there. If you can get Keenan out, I'll get him way before I try to go for Mike Williams. But I'd probably just try to hold on to him for now.
Yeah, it's probably a guy you want to hold the rest of his season. Is pretty up in the air in terms of how well he's going to perform. If you have him on your team, which I do in a couple leagues, I would probably trade him away. It's a guy that is probably not going to get back to that top 5 wide receiver area again. This last week is about as high as his trade value is going to get after the bad weeks he's had. If you can convince somebody, hey, this last week is what he's going to be looking like for the rest of the season. He's got good matchups coming up. You can tell somebody that, and you can get DeAndre Hopkins out of him. By all means, go get DeAndre Hopkins for him. But at the very least, I would probably just hold on to him because it's not a lot of people are going to be shying away from wanting to take up a guy that's been not necessarily inconsistent, but just has had more bad weeks and good weeks recently. A lot of people have recency bias and nobody cares about what he did at the beginning of the season.
Right. All right. So now that we got these players out of the way, I want to give a few quick fire questions to you, Austin. So hope you're ready for them. It's on the spot. You don't know about them.
Yeah, you're right. This wasn't in our game plan, so I'm I'm ready. About as ready as I'm going to be.
Yeah, I want to see your thoughts on these are some reported popular trade questions. So I just want to see where you would lean on a bunch of these guys. First off, we're going to do Deontay Johnson or James Robinson.
I'm a good James Robinson. I think he's got a good rest of the season coming up. And I'm not just saying that because I've got him in a few fantasy leagues, and actually I don't have him in a few fantasy leagues. I have him in every fantasy league I'm in. But he's got a good rest of the season coming up. When healthy, he's the only player on that offense I get to use. It seems like Urban Meyer is starting to like him more and more as the weeks have gone on. Deontay Johnson has been a really good receiver, but it's just a matter of getting him the ball. And it doesn't seem like Big Ben can get him the ball as much as you would like him to get the ball. So I'm a good James Robinson.
Yeah, same for me. I just feel like workhorse running backs are so hard to find. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I go with Robinson as well. Now we're going Hollywood Brown or Josh Jacobs.
Hollywood for sure. Hollywood's been great. As long as Lamar Jackson can continue on this pace that Lamar Jackson's been on, it's Josh Jacobs has been serviceable. Josh Jacobs is a much better running back than he's being used to be, but I think Hollywood Brown has been. This is his breakout season for sure, and that's been great for him.
Yeah, Lamar's definitely grown a lot as a passer, as we mentioned earlier. But as long as Lamar quits eating Chipotle or whatever it is that's making him sick all this time, yeah, I think Hollywood will be fine. I'd be fine with either side of the trade depending on what your roster needs are. If you need a running back, I'd be okay with Josh Jacobs. If you need a wide receiver, I'd be okay with Hollywood Brown. Just really depends on your roster needs there. But yeah. Daryl Henderson or Justin Jefferson?
Justin Jefferson. I feel like that was pretty easy.
I do too, especially after his past few weeks with Henderson slumping.
Yeah, I don't think I need too much of an explanation on that one. It's Justin Jefferson is becoming a top 5 wide receiver in this league. A buddy of mine's an LSU fan, and he's been really, really putting me on these LSU guys. So guys like Justin Jefferson have been really somebody I've been watching for a while. Ever since even in college and stuff. But he's slowly becoming a top 5 wide receiver in the league right now. So I mean, he's elite. I love him.
Next up is Cordarrelle Patterson or Terry McLaurin.
I gotta go scary Terry. Patterson is, still probably the only player in that entire offense aside from Kyle Pitts. But that offense is also as slow as that offense can get. Arthur Smith has not been that offensive guru that everybody was expecting him to be coming into Atlanta. But Scary Terry is also the only player on Washington's offense. It seems like Taylor Heineke's starting to get in a rhythm with McLaurin, and they got Antonio Gibson and everything. Antonio Gibson's been great when healthy, but in terms of the passing game, it really seems like it's been Heineke and McLaurin and nothing else.
AJ Brown or Antonio Gibson?
I got to go. You said AJ?
AJ Brown, yep.
I'm going to go Antonio Gibson. The passing game for the Titans has not, and AJ Brown is a really, really good receiver, probably top 15, I'd say, somewhere around there. They just haven't been using him for whatever reason. The Titans are refusing to use AJ Brown. It's an insane talent in AJ Brown. They're just refusing to use him, and I don't know why. So I got to go with Antonio Gibson. Yeah,
it's been really odd, especially with Derrick Henry being out. I figured AJ Brown was skyrocketed from that, but really hasn't happened yet. Do what?
Somehow they're winning games still.
Yeah, true. Well, except against the Texans, but
as long as they're playing playoff teams, they can win games.
Right. Next up is Alvin Kamara or George Kittle.
Give me Kamara when healthy.
That's the thing. You're risking Kamara being healthy or not here.
Yeah.
Because we can't say when healthy because Kamara is not healthy.
I'd still take Kamara. When he's on the field, he is everything, especially in an offense right now that has no wide receivers, no running backs aside from Mark Ingram now. And the only reason he was brought in is because Kamara hasn't been on the field. But when he's on the field, he is literally, without Mike Thomas, he's wide receiver 1 and RB1. So, I mean, he's the best of both worlds. So I'd say healthy or not, as long as he is playing, give me Alvin Kamara.
So Kamara's missed the past 2 weeks. Andy's had his bye week. I want you to guess real quick on what running back he is on the year so far.
He's missed the last 2 weeks and he's had a bye.
Right. So he's missed 3 weeks total.
Or is he like 11 or 12 maybe?
He's at 10. He's still a top 10 running back.
Jesus. That's not, yeah. So, I mean, that shows a low in his value. Weeks of zeros, and he's still a top 10 back.
I want to see what Kittle's at real quick, though, because Kittle's missed a lot of the season so far.
in most of the season.
Kittle's tight end 15 on the
Oh,
season. Past 3 weeks, he's had 19 fantasy points, 16 and 13.
Yeah, so he's still being heavily featured on the offense.
Right. This next one, Myles Gaskin or Deontay Johnson?
Give me Deontay Johnson. Myles Gaskin isn't being used the way that he should be used at all.
He's so inconsistent, as unfortunate as it is.
He's very talented, but I mean, they're just everybody went into the season thinking Brian Flores is going to get Myles Gaskin the ball a ton, and he just, even when he gets the ball, it's not like he's doing that much with it. He's a talented back. He's just not.
Deontay Johnson or Jalen Waddle?
See, they're both in a similar situation where they're talented receivers, but the quarterback play is inconsistent. And in the Steelers' case, it's inconsistent because their quarterback throw further than 10 yards. Yeah. And in the Dolphins' case, it's inconsistent because the quarterback himself is inconsistent quarterback. You don't know who's under center every week. So it's a really tough one, but give me Deontay Johnson in that. I think he is. Nah, you know what? Give me Jalen Waddle.
I gotta say, I'd probably personally go Waddle in that situation.
I think Waddle's got more value in terms of being a deep threat and everything, and I feel like he can, he's got that jet sweep value too.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on making through that gauntlet. Which actually, let me pull up one more that I kind of want to see your thoughts on.
Okay.
Would you go with Deebo Samuel the rest of the way or DeAndre Hopkins?
Deebo.
No, I probably would too.
Yeah, I don't think that one's slowing down. I don't think he's slowing down at all.
No.
If we put him in a trend or end segment, it's a trend. He's going to continue trending for sure.
I'm just trying to think of like some at this point because this is kind of fun. Deebo or Devontae Adams?
Give me Deebo still.
I guess, yeah. I think I'd probably take Deebo as well. Deebo's just been a man down there.
And it's not even just in the receiving game. In the rushing game, he's been crazy.
Oh, yeah, he's been really good. He's been getting like 5 rushes a game, which is crazy.
I mean, you'd think he's a running back. I knew he was a good receiver, but man, he's looking like I never foresaw him being the wide receiver one that he is right now, to be honest.
Right. Last one, I promise. Jamar Chase or Mike Evans? This one's pretty tough.
Now you've stumped me here because they're both really talented wide receivers, really talented quarterbacks throwing them the ball in relatively crowded wide receiver rooms.
Yeah.
However, I think Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have a better connection than Mike Evans and Tom Brady do. So give me Jamar Chase.
I gotta say, I probably lean Jamar Chase just for the fact that Antonio Brown's going to come back sooner or later, and that's going to bring down Mike Evans' targets. But yeah, I'd probably lean Jamar Chase there as well. Now, let's go ahead and move on to our starts of the week. Now that we're done talking about trades and everything, which if you guys have more trade questions that you want answered, make sure to send us a message on Twitter. We'll get back to you. But yeah, it's one of these sides over here. I'm pretty sure
I watched You Alone last week, and you pointed to one direction, and I wasn't here to point to the other direction. And of course, you're on the other side. So
right. It should be on the left side of your screen wherever you're watching. That's what I know. But yeah, so starts of the week this week. First up, I'm going to do my quarterback, which is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is playing San Francisco, which are giving up the 9th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. Now, I looked up at what Cousins is quarterback-wise on the season. I want to hear your guess on where you think he's ranked.
I've got him in a few different leagues, and I'm pretty sure he's top 10 if I'm not mistaken.
He's quarterback 9, which I was very surprised to see. But he has been doing really well. He's got good offensive weapons there with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison whenever he's being thrown in. So he's got good weapons. He's got a good matchup.
KJ Osborne has just been, for whatever reason, good.
Yeah. Just out of nowhere.
But yeah, Kirk Cousins has been great. The one word I'd use to describe him this season right now is underrated. He's been very underrated. A lot of people last year looked at him and said, man, this guy's not worth this contract that he's getting. I'm not telling you this season he's worth that contract that he's getting either, because he's getting a lot of money. But Kirk Cousins has been playing like a top 10 quarterback. He really has. Just like his fantasy numbers are telling you, he's been playing like a top 10 quarterback. He's let me take a look here. Only 3 of the 10 games. He's played 10 games. Only 3 of them he had less than 2 touchdowns. He's got a great wide receiver core. He's got a great running game to open up that passing game if need be. And he can get on the ground if he needs to. He's a big boy, but not the most athletic quarterback in the world. But if he needs to take off and run, he'll take off and run. So I really feel like Kirk Cousins is probably, a great start this week against San Francisco, who already isn't that great against quarterbacks. They're probably middle of the pack, I'd say. But you get Kirk Cousins out there, he's always a good start for sure. My quarterback of the week to start is going to be, for the second week in a row, Cam Newton. This week I get to defend him. Last week he was my quarterback. My internet disappeared, so I sent Luke my starts of the week. He had to defend my picks for me. This week I'm here to defend my own picks. Cam Newton, start of the week. Last week proved me correct. A lot of people didn't think he'd come in and just be that featured part of the offense. He has been that featured part of the offense. He proved that last week. He's got good receivers. He's got Robbie Anderson. He's got DJ Moore. He's got Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. And then he's got his legs on top of that. So Cam Newton, always a good start. This week he's got Miami, who isn't that great. They got a terrible defense. They really do. Despite the fact that they have a good defense on paper, they have not been playing up to those standards. Right now, they are giving up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks. And that's not even including quarterbacks who are taking off on the ground like Cam Newton does. He's going to get you a ton of points this week. I almost guarantee it.
Yeah, no, I really love Cam Newton this week. I am so glad he's back in Carolina, because I don't know what it was. Seeing him in New England just did not sit right with me at all. It just didn't feel natural. But him back in Carolina kind of actually warms my heart, even though I'm not a Carolina fan.
He looks happy, which is nice.
Right. I got to say, he looks at home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's definitely a good start this week against Miami, because, he had a good matchup against Washington, and we saw what happened.
Mm-hmm.
My running back start of the week is my guy, my draft darling from last year, Antonio Gibson. Gibson's season. Gibson has, like I said earlier, he had his season high yardage this past week with 95 yards, and he's getting healthier after that bye week. He had some rest finally for that shin. But Gibson, he's playing against Seattle, and Seattle gives the 2nd most points to running backs. So it's a great matchup for him. I think he's going to be able to take advantage of it, which also last week, whenever he had that 95 yards, he didn't have a target in that game, which is his only game this year without a target. So I'd expect those to come back as well.
Yeah, what you're getting with Antonio Gibson, you're not just getting a good runner, you're getting somebody you can throw to out of the backfield as well. When Antonio,
he was a wide receiver in college, which not many people know. Right. So
I'm glad you knew that too.
Yeah.
He's 6'2", 220. So it's not like he's just some small little guy who just can't catch. He was a wide receiver. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. That's why he was rumored to be getting that Christian McCaffrey style offense this year. Obviously, clearly hasn't happened, but he's still very, very good. But yeah, that's what you're getting with Antonio Gibson. You're getting the receiving game. You're getting the rushing game. He's still a really good running back. When him and Terry McLaurin are the only 2 pieces of that offense, that's all you really need. So, I mean, Antonio Gibson's always a good start. Seattle giving up the third most points to running backs. For sure. I mean, Antonio Gibson is a good start. As long as he's healthy, he's a good start. My running back of the week is James Robinson. Like I said, I've got James Robinson in all 4 of my leagues. I will never have a bad thing to say about James Robinson ever as a Colts fan. He's probably one of my favorite running backs in the entire league. He is being utilized finally. At the beginning of the season, he wasn't, but now he's being utilized the way he should be in Jacksonville. Urban Meyer is finally getting him the touches that he deserves. And when he gets the touches that he deserves, he produces. He really does. This season, after week 2, when he actually started getting, those touches that he can do something with, he only had 1 game with less than 10 fantasy points. And that was against Seattle. And that was only because he had 4 carries that entire game.
So, yeah, he played 11% of snaps, so he got hurt during that game, I believe.
Yeah. So when he's in, he's going to produce whether hurt or not, because the last 2 weeks he's been hurt. Against Indy, he was almost not going to play. He was a game time decision against Indy. Finished with 12 carries, 57 yards, a touchdown, and then 4 receptions on top of that. So, I mean, when he's in, he does what needs to be done. Atlanta this week, not the greatest against running backs. They are giving up the 8th most points is what I have here right now. James Robinson is the only part of that offense that gets any sort of attention. If he's healthy, which it looks like he finally is healthy, it doesn't look like he's going to be a game time decision this week. I believe he's been practicing so far. So as long as he continues on this pace, James Robinson is going to be a great matchup this week.
Yeah, no, James Robinson, I know you said that you will never have anything bad to say as a Colts fan, which I don't either. He worked his butt off to get where he is right now. So all the kudos to him. He's a really good running back. I'm kind of sad that they drafted Travis Etienne because I wanted to stay James Robinson's backfield for his rookie contract, but Etienne's there, so we'll see how that shakes out next year whenever Etienne's back. But yeah, he's got a great matchup this week, so you gotta keep him in your lineup.
I honestly forgot Travis Etienne existed, to be honest.
Yeah, since we never got to see him, it hasn't been a thing really. People forget.
And at the very least, I feel like when he does get incorporated in this offense, I feel like he's going to be used more as a receiver than he will be as a runner, which will be
right. I gotta say, because the rumor was that Jacksonville really was wanting Kadarius Toney to be like a gadget guy, and my guess is that since Kadarius Toney got taken ahead, they instead took Etienne to be that gadget guy.
The next best gadget guy. I mean, it's not like it's a bad option.
Which, I mean, it helps too because, I mean, he's got his college quarterback there too.
Yeah, exactly.
For wide receiver, I actually am going to pivot because I saw a better player that I wanted to talk about, and it's going to be Brandon Iuke. I'm switching it because I originally had Elijah Moore. He's kind of a dart throw just because you don't know what's going to happen with Zack Wilson, but his production is not to be ignored. If you sit him on your bench, sit him at your own risk because he could still go off for 15 to 20 fantasy points a game this week. But Brandon Iuke, I'm switching to him just because I didn't look at his matchup, but he's playing against Minnesota, which whenever I look, Minnesota gives up the 3rd most points to wide receivers. They're both playing for fantasy, or not for fantasy, but they're both playing for actual playoff contention. So I think this is going to be a tough game. They're both probably going to score quite a bit. With Brandon Iuke getting back involved in this offense, I'm fine with starting him this week.
Yeah, I know we touched up on him a little bit earlier, but Brandon Iuke is finally being incorporated into the offense the way that he should be. He's a very talented wide receiver.
He's so talented. Man.
Super, super good. Loved him out of Arizona State. But yeah, for sure. He is against Minnesota this week. Minnesota, terrible secondary aside from Harrison Smith. And that's pretty much it. And even Harrison Smith hasn't been the Harrison Smith of old this season. In my opinion, he's a top 2 safety. And in some cases, I'd say he's not even 2. He's He's the best safety in the league in some cases. This season, he hasn't even really looked top 5. So this secondary is going to get torched every single week, which is good for, both wide receivers playing the Vikings and for the Vikings offense as well, because the Vikings offense is going to continually get in the shootouts. So anybody you have on that Vikings offense is always going to be used. Just like anybody that is going to be playing the Vikings is going to be used well, just as well. My wide receiver start of the week for what may be the 3rd or 4th week in a row is going to be the Bucs wide receiver room. They have had insane matchups the last few weeks. And this coming week, they've got another matchup that is going to be pretty much just as good. They are going up against the Colts defense. Now, the Colts defense has started to come together a little bit more with Isaiah Rodgers and Lock Yassin. They've actually started playing very well. The issue right now is the safeties over the top. Andrew Sendejo is a liability at safety. I could go out there with my limited high school playing time at safety and go play better than Andrew Sendejo has. All right.
If only we had Shasha right here yet.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the other side, I don't even know who starts over there anymore. It looks like George Odom has been starting there, who has mainly been a special teamer for us. Now, granted, a first team All-Pro special teamer, so you can't disrespect George Odom. He had a pick last week against Josh Allen, almost had 2.
He almost had like 4 by the end of that game.
It was raining, so the quarterback play for both sides wasn't great. But yeah, the Bucs wide receivers in general always have a good matchup just because there are so many of them. Antonio Brown might be back this week. That's still up in the air, but if he's back, any of them, start any of the wide receivers. The Colts can't cover all of them. As Colts fans, we've seen this enough this season. The Colts can't cover all of them. One of them's going to score. One of them might score twice. You never know. So, any of them are not a bad start.
I got to say, Diggs scored twice this past week. So,
Exactly.
Plus, it seems like everybody in the league knows to pick on Xavier Rhodes. So, Xavier Rhodes has not been what he was, especially this past year. Like last year, he was really good, and now this year he's not very good at all.
Like prime Xavier Rhodes, and then this year, like Xavier Rhodes that left the Vikings for a reason.
Right. Yeah, so, definitely the Bucs wide receiver should be a start. If Antonio Brown plays, I'd be comfortable starting him too, along with Godwin and Evans and Rob Gronkowski, because Gronk was back and he had I forget what it was, 6 catches for 80-something yards on Monday night. So
Gronk went great. I watched one play where he literally, this is what his first game back or his second game back?
First game back.
Yes, he had one catch that I literally just turned the game on, where he caught the ball about 5 yards in front of the line of scrimmage and fought 6 dudes off of him to fight to the sideline.
Yeah,
I was like, he's back. It's Gronk. It's
Gronk. Yeah,
6 receptions, 71 yards. By the way, that's what he had.
Yeah, which is crazy. So yeah, I'd be comfortable starting the Bucs receiving room as well. Moving on to tight ends, I am doing Dalton Schultz. I know we talked about it a lot earlier with the Cowboys players, but when Gallup was out, Schultz was a big part of the offense, and he was actually like a top 5 receiver at one point, or top 5 tight end, I should say.
Yeah.
And now, do what?
I think he was pretty close to top 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I gotta say he was right up there, because I'm looking back at his beginning of the year. It was 10 points, 3, 26, 17, 13, 12 before their bye week. But Gallup's back now, but he still had 8 targets this past week whenever Amari Cooper was out. But now both Cooper and Lamb might be missing this next game, which is just going to help him get more targets. Plus, they're playing Las Vegas, which Vegas is giving up the 3rd most points to tight ends. So I think he's going to get a lot more targets than he usually does. He's probably going to be back to what he was at the beginning of the year, and probably a top tight end option for you this week.
Oh, almost a guarantee. It looks like Dak Prescott really loves throwing to Dalton Schultz, and it's not like he's a bad tight end. He's a pretty average tight end. I still feel like Dallas needs to go out and get a tight end in the draft maybe this year. But Dalton Schultz, just anytime you get him the ball, he's going to make a play for you. And as long as he is playing, 99% of the snaps like he did last week, he's bound to produce for sure. Great matchup against the Raiders. They have no linebackers to cover any tight end. Honestly, you or I could probably go out there and line up his tight end for the Cowboys and probably do just as well as Dalton Schultz is going to do. So it's a great matchup here. My tight end of the week is going to be a guy that I am always high on. One of the best tight ends in the league, I feel like, and has just been lower valued this year because of his quarterback play, and that's going to be Noah Fant. Noah Fant this week has the Chargers, who I am showing giving up the third most points to tight ends. He hasn't been as hot as he can be this year, but he's also had some tough matchups, and he's been dealing with I guess he hasn't really been dealing with injury. It's just they haven't been using him that much. He had COVID a couple weeks ago, which kept him out of the Dallas game. But they're just not really using him a lot, and it's mostly due to that stacked wide receiver room.
The crazy thing is that he's getting targets.
Yeah, he's getting a ton of targets still, but hasn't had a touchdown since week 6 against the Raiders, which
another good reason for Dalton
Schultz. But yeah, I think the Chargers are a really, really great matchup for tight ends. Another team with no linebackers to cover anybody. So I feel like he's pretty due for a touchdown. If you want to put in Noah Fant, he had 10 points against the Eagles, who are giving up the most points to tight ends. So if you're going to put in Noah Fant, he's probably going to give you some sort of points.
Yeah, no, I really like Noah Fant. I actually bought him in my Dynasty League. So now I have Dallas Goddard, Dalton Schultz, and Noah Fant in that league, which I hate holding 3 tight ends, but they're all good and I can't drop one. So, yeah, I got all 3 of them. But, yeah, Noah Fant, he's getting the targets. It's just he hasn't been getting a lot of production with it. He's been average. He's not been bad, but he hasn't been good either. So, yeah, I definitely think this is a matchup that he could exploit and do well. Maybe he can finally break that touchdown drought.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think he's a good shot of getting you at least like 8-ish points.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's really, with a tight end, that's really all you can get. You're not going to get very much more.
Just count. Yeah, he's getting 6.5 targets a game, so it's not like he's not being targeted or something.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's getting the targets. It's just that for tight ends, you're hoping for more production, more touchdowns. Well, Austin, I think that is all we have on the agenda for today. Do you have anything else for the listeners?
I don't think so. It is good to be back. As always, hopefully both of our internets are pretty consistent from here out. So it is good to be back. It always is good to be here with you, talking fantasy, helping out the listeners, anybody who is going to listen, anybody who makes it this far. I know we're probably close to 2 hours into this. So if you did make it this far, hearing our opinions, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, this is a longer episode because it's trade deadline week. I wanted to make sure we got a bunch of trade discussion because this is important going into the fantasy playoffs. You got to try to get the best team you can moving forward. So I wanted to get as much of that discussion time as we could in there. But if you want to discuss more with us, go ahead and follow us on Twitter. One of these directions, as Austin loves to do, it's at the fantasy table, at the Austin Isaac, at Big Verkamp. Just message us on there if you are wanting a trade question like, hey, my league mate offered me this. Do you think I should do it? If you have a start sit question, if you have a guy that's on the waiver wire wanting to see if you should go pick him up, just let us know. We'll answer everybody that we can. But yeah, we're here to try to help you guys out. and hopefully we can do that. So, yeah, any closing thoughts?
I think you pretty much nailed it all on the head right there. I mean, could not have said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the Fantasy Table. Until next week, we'll see you guys later. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.